It has been over 7 months since I've had my Land Rover Discovery. I'm currently in this Range Rover, which is a courtesy car from the Land Rover dealership. So 7 months later, what has happened, what's been going on, and what is the big update that I've got to tell you today? So for those that have been following the journey, you will know that I haven't had my Land Rover Discovery 5 for around 7 months now, or probably a little bit longer. To be precise, it was the 17th of July last year that I took my Land Rover Discovery 5 to a Marshall's dealership because it was having some trouble. And basically the trouble it was having was when you got in the car, everything was fine. You pressed the start button with your foot on the brake like normal, and it all sort of lit up like it was going to start and then just would completely power down. So when you get into the car, you put your foot on the brake, press the ignition key like normal. Car comes on like so, and then it completely powers itself off. And initially in July last year, it was doing this a little bit intermittently, like it was probably one every 10, one every 20 starts. So took it to the dealership at the time, they took it in, they had a look at it and said, look, I think it's some wiring under the left front wheel, somewhere around there in that portion of the vehicle. There was a connector that was a little bit corroded, and they said, look, this is going to need a new wiring harness. We can get this for you on the warranty, which was great because I pay for the extended warranty on my Discovery. They cleaned up the connections, plugged it in and said, look, see how you get on. We'll wait for the new harness to come in because it wasn't in stock at the time. Now, while I was waiting, I was away on holiday and the problem just kept getting worse. So it would get more frequent that the vehicle wouldn't start. And it was getting to the point when it was 1 in 5, 1 in 3, one every other start. It just wouldn't start. And the only thing that made it start again was if you got out of the car, unlocked it, walked away, left it for 20 minutes, did the same process again, and then it would just miraculously start. No reason why or what changed, but something obviously did. Now, for those that follow will also know, I'm absolutely no stranger at all to problems with my Discovery. I've had quite a lot. In fact, I had to have a new engine, had to have new suspension arms, there's so many things that I've documented here on YouTube, just living with it really over the last 3-4 years. And I don't know why that is. I think I just got a bad one, right? I know there's stories of people on here that have had very good cars that have lasted them a long time and been no trouble at all, which is great. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, this car I have seemed to be quite a bad one. It seemed to have ongoing issues, but I think now pretty much everything has been replaced on it, like I say, including the engine. So hopefully the problems will be less in the future when I get it back. So when I bought my Discovery, like I say, it was about 8-9 months old. It done about 10,000 miles. I bought it from a Land Rover dealership, didn't do any checks on it at all, and maybe I should have done in hindsight. And now with so much new technology now, if I was to buy another vehicle again, and when I bought my Audi R8 recently, I used a website called Car Vertical to check off, to make sure it all lined up to be correct. I was confident in buying a car that had a good history to it, and maybe I should have done that more with my Discovery. Car Vertical is a service that provides vehicle history checks in more than 30 countries with over 400 million vehicles covered. They get data from various national registries, insurance companies, crash car auctions, and the best bit is you get to find out whether the vehicle you're buying has had previous problems, has it been repaired, is there something that you might not know about when you're going to look to buy it. With my discount code DOCTOR, you get 20% off your first check, which is so worthwhile to give you that peace of mind before you buy your next car, to ensure you're not buying something that might have previous problems. My car not starting once every other time, I thought it's got to go back in and go get sorted. So took it back in and said, look, I can't have it because it's literally going to break down everywhere I leave it. I don't dare turn it off anywhere. And then I left it with them. They said, look, we'll wait for the parts to come in. And that was last July. And it's been until now, or at least until about 2 weeks ago, that the parts were just nowhere to be seen. And it's been very frustrating and a really long journey waiting this long to have my car back. I've had a whole host of different cars in the meanwhile as courtesy cars. I've had a lot of Kia Sportages. I've had a Discovery for a bit, a D300, which was very nice, and definitely the engine I'd get if I was to buy another Discovery would be the 3 litre, because the 2 litres seem to have a lot of trouble from what I have of my own experience, but also you guys that watch this, a lot of you tell me of their troubles with 2 litre engines from Land Rover. I'm now in a Range Rover Sport, which is great, and I've actually really enjoyed having this vehicle. It's the same model year as my Discovery, and it's been really, really good. It's been absolutely flawless. I've driven it all the way to France and back, and it's been great. So really enjoyed having this car, but my car is imminently due back, and that is because about 2 weeks ago they got the part and they fitted the part on the front, which is fantastic. And then the plan is for them to also service it, MOT it, because I'd sawn it, it'd been that long, it was off-road. So that was a plan, then get it back and see where we are. Now, as you can imagine, because the vehicle had been left for 7 months sat outside not running, there's going to be some things that are going to be required to get it back into action. And so marshals, who I've been working with very closely, have actually been really supportive and very good. It's easy to get really frustrated with JLR, and you need to remember where your frustration lies, because how it works is a dealer network work with JLR, and so they're essentially reliant on JLR supplying the parts, all the information. And I've had loads of conversations with JLR. Most of them have been quite disappointing, and I've been quite frustrated with the outcomes of just not hearing back, and just a very loose and non-committal timeline that I've just generally had from them. But marshals have actually been very supportive and very good in the process, and they pushed to kind of get it serviced, to get it MOT'd and get it back in a good running order for when it came back to me. So they serviced it last week, I think, but there were some problems found with it, as you can probably imagine. So one of them was it had an oil leak now developed from the front cover, and then the new front cover plate was ordered, new sealant, and it was sorted out. So that was the first thing. The next thing I think was the suspension bushes. They'd gone and perished because the vehicle's been left standing for so long outside, and they've been replaced. It's also had a few other parts done to it underneath that have just aged because it's not been running. And I think vehicles always do better when they are actually run. And so mine being static for so long, it's just had so many problems with it. So trying to get that back. And marshals are very keen to get to a point where it doesn't have advisories on its MOT when it does get MOT checked. Once it passes MOT, which it will do, and then it's now been serviced. It's had a major service just now. It's had all these parts replaced that were kind of perished from being left standing. I'm going to be getting my Discovery 5 back. Now, I keep thinking it's going to be this week, but I've also been like, I don't know when that is, because I've heard that months ago, and so I'm still waiting to see if it does actually come back. But at least now the parts are there, it's been repaired and it's been sorted. So the question is going to be, is when I do get it back, what's it going to be like? And do I want to keep it is the big question, really. And I know I've asked that question before and here, but the reality is, with a car that's been left that long and all the problems I've had with it, I do feel like it's just time to let it go. And if I let it go, what am I going to get to replace it as a family car? I have thought about a Defender 110, and I mean the year 2016 and before that, so the old shape Defender. And that's because my experience with the older Defenders have been really good. They've been very reliable, pretty solid, much simpler than what's in these cars, which is basically a load of electronics that can easily fail with sensors, etc. Living with a Defender of that age group will be very different to the Discovery, just in regards to comforts and all that comes with it. So I'm kind of weighing that one up. The other problem I've got is it's really hard not to see how much of a good price Land Rovers now have become, and particularly if you get one that's got a good engine in it, say the 3-litre engine, 2020 model year, Range Rover, you can get them at a really good price at the moment. I think from a depreciation point of view, when you look at the stats, Land Rover have dropped significantly in the last 2 years, and it seems like a really good time to pick up an old Sport or an old Range Rover that's like 2-3 years old. I hate myself for saying this, considering all the trouble I've had with my Land Rover. Why the hell would I ever buy another one? The reality is, for like high 30,000s, you can get into something pretty good. This car, for example, is probably £35,000, 40,000 miles, Range Rover Sport autobiography. It's got like everything. It's got a fridge in the middle. It's got like everything you possibly want, right? It's got fully spec'd. For like £35,000, it's not a lot of money for the amount of car that you're getting. And I mean that in the best possible way. It certainly isn't a cheap car, but if you're looking at buying a Range Rover, for a Range Rover, it is quite cheap, considering these cars were like £80,000, £90,000 new. So I keep going to Auto Trader all the time, trying to look at all these different vehicles. I know a lot of people say, oh, get a Land Cruiser. I don't really like Land Cruisers. I'll be really honest. I'll put it out there. I'm not a big fan of a Land Cruiser personally. So decision's going to be when it comes back, what vehicle am I going to go for? What does that look like? But I'm hoping in the next week, I'm going to hear from the dealership to say your car's ready to be picked up. And that's going to be quite weird getting back into it and having not seen it for that long. We're going to be getting it back, and I'll have it back on the channel. So hope it's been a good update for you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.